There was a time when carrying the family didn't mean going slow. By the late 1950s, while most eyes were on the big coupes and the muscle cars beginning to dominate the conversation, something far more interesting was quietly happening on American roads. Some manufacturers decided to hide very serious engines inside cars that, on the outside, looked completely harmless. Station wagons built for everyday life, but with enough V8 under the hood to surprise more than a few drivers on the highway. And this is where the story gets truly interesting, because when people talk today about fast cars of the 1950s, almost nobody looks at family wagons. The conversation always goes to the same familiar names. The obvious ones, the loud ones, the ones everyone remembers first. But the reality was different. There were wagons that combined space, presence, and an ability to accelerate that many did not expect from a family car of the era. Discrete machines, but far more capable than their image suggested. In this video, we're going to explore some of the fastest American station wagons of the 1950s. Let's begin. 1957 to 1959, Mercury Colony Park. And now, we enter a territory where speed was disguised as pure American elegance. Because while the Pontiac already hinted at muscle beneath a family body, the Colony Park played a more subtle game. Mercury didn't need its wagon to look aggressive. Its strategy was different: visible luxury on the outside, and enough power to keep up with the new America of expanding highways. Visually, it projected exactly that philosophy. The body was long, solid, and clearly oriented toward premium family comfort. The famous wood-grain side trim reinforced its image as a respectable wagon, almost executive by late 1950s standards. Nothing in its silhouette suggested urgency, and yet the mechanical story was very different. In its more desirable configurations, Mercury offered high-output V8 engines that could exceed 300 horsepower, depending on specification. For a wagon of this size and mission, that placed it firmly within the fast traffic of the era. It wasn't about explosive launches, it was classic Mercury character: smooth, sustained speed with plenty in reserve on the open road. On the highway, it felt surprisingly comfortable maintaining elevated cruising speeds over long distances. This was the kind of family car that could cross entire states effortlessly and still keep pace when traffic picked up. Today, a well-kept Colony Park typically ranges between $25,000 and $55,000, with exceptional examples exceeding that range. Now, I want your opinion. Between the elegance of the Buick Caballero, the presence of the Pontiac Safari, and the fast luxury of the Mercury Colony Park, which wagon feels the most complete in this group? Tell me in the comments, because what comes next takes us back into Mopar territory with a very different approach. 1956. Chrysler New Yorker, Town and Country. And now the conversation clearly moves up a level, because while some wagons on this list aim to surprise with strong performance, Chrysler was playing in a completely different league. Here, speed didn't come disguised as a basic family hauler. It came paired with heavy luxury and one of the most respected power plants of the entire decade. You already know the key name: Hemi. Visually, the Town and Country projected exactly what Chrysler wanted to communicate in the mid-1950s: authority. The body was long, imposing, and carried that almost institutional presence few wagons of the time could match. It didn't look hurried. It looked like it didn't need to be. But beneath that calm presence was something very serious. In 1956, it could be equipped with a 354 cubic inch Hemi V8 producing around 280 horsepower. For a luxury wagon of this size, that level of power placed it comfortably among the most capable family haulers on the highway in the second half of the 1950s. This wasn't nervous acceleration. It was deep, steady thrust, and very hard to ignore on the open road. Where this Chrysler truly shined was on long-distance travel. At elevated cruising speeds, the car felt solid, stable, and backed by a mechanical reserve that inspired total driver confidence. It was executive speed, in the best sense of the phrase. In terms of production, it always moved in lower volumes than more mainstream wagons, and today well-preserved examples, especially those with properly documented Hemi engines, are increasingly appreciated by serious collectors. Currently, a 1956 New Yorker Town and Country in good condition typically ranges between $35,000 and $75,000, with exceptional examples exceeding that. And now, we approach the finale with a wagon that chose a much more direct and surprising formula for the late 1950s. 1958 Ford Ranch Wagon / Country Sedan. And this is where Ford enters the conversation, with far more seriousness than many people remember. Because when people talk about fast wagons of the 1950s, the spotlight almost always goes to GM or the big Mopars. But Ford had long understood something important. In the new highway era, even the basic family car needed enough power to cruise with authority. And these wagons did exactly that, better than their image suggested. Visually, both the ranch wagon and the country sedan carried a clean, functional, very American look. There was no unnecessary drama and no obvious performance pretension. They were honest family cars, well-proportioned and clearly designed for daily use. But this video isn't about appearances. It's about what happened when the throttle went all the way down. In their stronger V8 configurations, Ford offered engines approaching 300 horsepower by the end of the decade. In a full-size wagon, that was more than enough to maintain highway speeds with complete confidence against much of the era's traffic. It wasn't the flashiest in the group, but it was one of the most capable when the road opened up. Long-distance cruising was especially convincing. Progressive acceleration, strong straight-line stability, and that familiar late 1950s big Ford feeling, always with something in reserve under the right foot. During 1958, Ford produced these wagons in relatively high volumes, compared with some more exclusive rivals, which keeps them accessible in today's classic market. Even so, well-preserved high-spec V8 examples are becoming increasingly sought after by buyers who want a truly usable vintage family car. Currently, a 1958 ranch wagon or a country sedan in good condition typically ranges between $20,000 and $45,000, depending on configuration and originality. 1959 Dodge Custom Sierra wagon. And now, the conversation gets serious again, because while the Colony Park focused on smooth speed wrapped in luxury, Dodge chose to keep things much more direct. By the late 1950s, the brand already understood that even a family wagon needed to feel solid when the driver asked for more, and the Custom Sierra made that very clear. Visually, it didn't try to disguise itself as an elegant coupe or a delicate family car. The body was large, yes, but it also projected the kind of toughness Mopar was known for in this era. The lines were firm, the stance wide, and the overall look suggested there was more character beneath the surface than first appeared. It wasn't subtle, but it didn't need to be, because once again, the main argument was under the hood. In 1959, it could be equipped with large displacement V8 engines producing over 300 horsepower in its strongest configurations. For a full-size wagon, that placed it comfortably among the family haulers capable of maintaining fast highway speeds on America's growing interstate network. Today, well-preserved custom Sierras are becoming increasingly uncommon on the classic market, especially properly documented V8 cars. Depending on condition, a 1959 example typically ranges between $25,000 and $50,000, with especially original units gaining interest among old-school Mopar enthusiasts. 1957 to 1959 Plymouth Suburban. And to close this list, we return to a philosophy that in the 1950s could be dangerously effective: speed without showmanship. Because while some models we saw today leaned on visible luxury or dominant presence, Plymouth played a different card with the Suburban. On paper, it was simply another American family wagon. In practice, it could be far quicker than many expected. Visually, it stayed faithful to Plymouth's late 1950s recipe: clean lines, balanced proportions, and a firm stance without unnecessary drama. It didn't have the spectacle of the Pontiac or the authority of the Chrysler, and precisely because of that, it slipped under the radar with ease. It was the perfect sleeper. But beneath that restrained appearance, Plymouth offered something that fits this video perfectly. By 1957, this wagon could be equipped with V8 engines producing over 300 horsepower in its most ambitious configurations. In a body that was relatively well proportioned for its size, that level of power gave the Suburban far more serious highway capability than its family-friendly image suggested. It wasn't trying to win stoplight races. Its strength was maintaining pace and surprising people along the way. On the open road, the thrust felt solid and usable, very much in line with what Plymouth was building in this pre-muscle boom era. It was fast in an honest way, no theatrics required. Today, a Plymouth Suburban in good condition typically ranges between $25,000 and $50,000, with especially original examples gaining interest among old-school American wagon enthusiasts. And after exploring these 1950s family haulers, one thing becomes very clear. For a long time, The story of the American automobile has almost always been told from the same angle. Big coupes, aggressive muscle cars, and the names everyone instantly remembers. But in parallel, almost quietly, some station wagons were doing something far more interesting. They were proving that a family car could move with real authority. Now, I want your opinion. Of all the wagons we saw today, which one surprised you the most with its real-world capability? Tell me in the comments, because your choice says a lot about how each of us understands this golden era of the American automobile. And if you thought these were quick, wait until you see what happened in the next decade. Click the video now on your screen and discover the fastest station wagons of the 1960s. Power went up, the stakes got higher, and some of those family haulers started playing in a completely different league. See you in the next video.